So what we plan to do right now is just do a highlight of all the conversations that we had throughout the course of the day. And then Emile is going to kind of do a wrap up and set the stage for tomorrow. My role at the moment is to highlight the panel that we just talked about. And of course, all the panelists had some great ideas around innovations. I think one of the prevalent things that came through was in terms of accommodations and flexibility. So in terms of our panel, some of the highlights where we talked about innovations in terms of what organizations are doing at the moment and different types of services that are available. We talked about different types of accommodations. We had some folks that talked about language and the importance of the words and that accommodations are people's rights. We also talked about the importance of flexibility in accommodations and what that would look like. Tomorrow, in the strategy, in the roundtables, it would be important to continue to talk about those innovations as we move forward. So if you didn't get an opportunity to ask your questions this afternoon, please make sure that you get to that roundtable tomorrow so that we can talk about them. I'm going to turn it over to Alec is next.
Hi, everybody. I'm going to just very briefly highlight the research panel and keynote. So I'm just going to pull a couple of things from the keynotes, which I thought was so powerful. We need far-reaching fundamental change, a bold vision, need to work together cooperatively, recommit to partnerships, networks, collaboration. There are many worlds of work. The approach can't be standardized. Then from Emile Tompa's economic presentation, we have a tremendous mountain to climb together. However, factors such as education level and other factors differentiate among the outcomes very greatly. So that starts giving us ideas of some matters we could address that could have an impact. Now, Catherine Lepel on legal regimes. She showed how, first of all, the legal regimes have such a tremendous range of impacts and outcomes, strengths and weaknesses. She also showed us that other jurisdictions around the world are doing things differently. And there's a lot to be learned. And that there are direct incentives and disincentives in many programs, either incenting the wrong behavior or disincenting the right behavior. Steve Esty was really important, and I think I'm really, really glad that he was a part of our discussions today, because he's showing us there's a higher level to this, an international level, a framework where essentially formalized, ratified sets of principles and rights have been endorsed by our own government. I won't go into the details of discussion, but we had a very rich discussion with some really good questions for that panel. And it opened up a lot of territory, which I think we'll get into tomorrow.
I saw him reach for the sign. Just under. That was good.
3 seconds.
That was good. I'm impressed. I'm impressed. So I get to talk about findings from my Rockstar panel this morning. And one of the findings was that mental health is a challenge and is the area that we really need to be giving some attention to, a lot of attention to. There's not full agreement on what the business case for hiring people with disabilities is, or even if we should be using the business case. But interesting, I was very proud of the panelists who said, I use it, and some said, I don't. So that's, I think, very telling. That we need new creative thoughts for talent acquisition, and we have to see the talents that are outside the box or outside the common thoughts. That employer champions are not looking at risks, but are looking at a new way of including talent in their workforce. And also that employer champions understand accommodations or adjustments, and that they are fluid, that both accommodations and adjustments are fluid in employment. That hiring for innovation is key, that each employer has their own journey, and that programs and services are effective when business is understood and that their needs for talent are known by service providers. And my top 2 takeaways, again, one is that employers are diverse, just like the job seekers who are looking for employment or return to work or retention. And the other thing is that struck me with the diversity of our panel is that most businesses start because somebody has an idea and they become an entrepreneur. And then as their idea grows and grows and grows and their business grows, all of a sudden they become employers. So it's not usual that people go into business to become employers. And I think that we need to remember that. Oh, and I have to stop. And we have to remember that. And that's the end. Oh, now I did have another panel though.
This is very technical.
Which is like 30 seconds, right? It was EPO's presentation, and I think that the high moments that I'm taking away from that is that the government is willing to listen through consultations and have made a financial commitment to employment for persons with disabilities, either through the EI or non-EI eligibility, and that they are willing not only to be a partner, but to sit at the table with us. So thank you.
In the panel of people with lived experience, we talked about understanding yourself and your strengths and weaknesses. And what I've just come to learn is I can't take notes and moderate a discussion at the same time. So I'm just going to share the highlights for me through the whole day in little bits and pieces. The first was that one of the workers with a disability made the workplace safer. Like, talking about what we bring to the table is, to me, inspiring. That employment for people with disabilities is about communication and collaboration. And isn't that right for all of us? Isn't that where we all want to work? That we have a need for fundamental change in how we look at these issues. That we need a progressive transformation to inclusion. And that's not just people with disabilities, that's all of us. A workplace that all of us feel like we're accommodated or that we fit in a good way. That there's policy levers out there that impact, sometimes consciously, sometimes unconsciously, what some of the outcomes are for workers with disabilities. And there's big economic drivers. And it looks like some of those now are pushing us all into more precarious employment, which makes it more difficult for us to be in that inclusive workplace. That we really need to address stigma. It's a big issue that came over and over again. That we're not so good at program evaluation and accountability. How well are our programs really working? It wasn't really clear, hardly anywhere, that we're really keeping track of that in a good, comprehensive way. That our present income security programs sometimes create barriers to employment, and that we need to have a rights, or it's valuable to have a rights-based approach to our issues.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I don't actually have a panel to summarize. But anyways, I want to tie up the day and also get us ready for tomorrow as well. I was just very, very impressed with all the amazing ideas and possibilities that were talked about today and identified today. And hopefully it's given us a lot of food for thought. We're asking you to take the learnings that you got from today, the ideas that were generated from what you heard people talk about, to bring it with you tomorrow. Hopefully it'll gel over the time period this evening while you're sleeping. And then tomorrow, we're gonna put you to work. Remember I said we all have a role to play, and we have a lot of work to do. So tomorrow, it's gonna be your turn, particularly in the afternoon. We're gonna ask you to address some questions that we'll identify for each of the round tables to discuss, and help us ultimately identify short-term and medium-term, as well as long-term directions we want to go in terms of framing a national strategy and action steps for going forward with a plan to make Canada a leader in this field. So that's going to be your work tomorrow afternoon. But first, we will actually have a few more presentations to help add to some of the exciting things we heard today. We're going to have new trends in technology being talked about by Neil Squire. And then we'll have a national panel of visionaries later in the morning. And then our work comes in the afternoon after a brief presentation by the Honorable Patricia Hajdu, Minister Hajdu. So that's our plan for tomorrow. So have a good evening, and we look forward to a really good session tomorrow, and hopefully a plan going forward that will keep us engaged for a long time. Thank you.